Graham Foster was dead for 6 years. Everyone in Emmerdale, and us watching at home, believed he'd been murdered. And now he's back, walking into Home Farm like he never left. But the part that really gave me chills wasn't the resurrection itself. It was something much smaller. Graham spots Joe Tate in conversation with Robert Sugden. Just a chat on the surface. Yet, it instantly feels like the kind of moment that quietly changes everything. Quick recap for anyone who's new. Graham faked his death back in 2020, and for 6 years, the village believed Pierce Harris had killed him. His return was confirmed at the start of January. Then, a flashback episode late last month revealed something even more unsettling. Graham had actually been in the village before the Corriedale crash. He'd heard about what April Windsor had been through and wanted to help Rona Goskirk. He tried to deal with Ray Walters, but the plan fell apart when Joe Tate showed up, forcing Graham to disappear. Still, a couple of days later, he came back to the Dales and chose the most direct route possible. He returned to Home Farm and revealed to Joe and Kim Tate that he was alive. Joe didn't want anything to do with him at first. The betrayal still hurt too much. But eventually, he decided to give Graham another chance. The thing is, Graham isn't back just to reconnect with old faces or meet the new residents. He's back in a world where Joe Tate has continued evolving, and Graham needs to understand exactly what kind of man Joe is now. On the surface, there's even been a pleasant surprise. Joe has found love with Dawn Taylor, and he's getting to know her children. It's the kind of detail that almost makes you think Joe has softened. Almost. Because Joe is a Tate, and a Tate is never truly just living life. There's always a game being played. Graham simply hasn't seen the full picture yet, until this episode. That changes the moment Graham sees Joe talking to Robert Sugden. Suspicion hits instantly, and by that evening, Graham confronts Joe at Home Farm. To understand why that conversation matters, we have to look at what Joe has been involved in. Last year, Kim told Joe about her plan to buy up all the land surrounding Home Farm. Joe was tasked with getting Butler's and Annie Sugden's land from Moira Dingle and the Sugden siblings, but he didn't do a great job at first. Then everything shifted when Joe gained leverage. The kind of leverage that isn't about money, but about fear. After Joe witnessed Victoria Sugden covering up John Sugden's murder at the start of 2026, he later found evidence at Celia Daniels' farm that Celia had been hiring illegal immigrants. Suddenly, Joe realized he was holding an enormous amount of power. He used it to pressure the Sugden siblings into selling their farmland to him, because if they refused, he'd go to the police about Victoria and John. And it doesn't stop there. Joe then had Robert plant ID cards from Celia's place inside Moira's house, knowing Moira would likely be arrested, and he could swoop in and take Butler's from her. So when Graham sees Joe and Robert together, it's not just odd. It's the smell of a plan, and a dirty one. Graham confronts Joe that evening, and Joe briefly references Kim's land-buying scheme. But Graham isn't satisfied with fragments. He makes it clear that if he's going to keep living alongside the two Tates, he needs to know everything they're doing. No half-truths, no selective honesty. Then Graham delivers the line that really sticks. He'll always play for Joe's team. But whether he'll play by the same rules is a completely different question. And that, to me, is where the tension becomes genuinely exciting. It doesn't sound like a direct betrayal. Not yet. It sounds like a warning. A boundary. Like Graham is saying, I'm with you, but I'm not your pawn. And that kind of ally is sometimes more dangerous than an open enemy, because they can share your goal while refusing your methods. Personally, I love the energy here because it isn't loud drama. It's a power struggle you can feel building under the surface. Joe is playing classic Tate games, secrets as weapons, pressure as currency, manipulation as strategy. Graham, on the other hand, feels like someone who understands the dark side of that world, but might have his own code. And in a grand plot, two people with different rules don't stay aligned for long, based only on what the article gives us. My prediction isn't Graham will betray Joe tomorrow. It's more interesting than that. The conflict is likely going to be about control. Graham has essentially declared loyalty, but conditional loyalty. If he tries to steer Kim's wider plan in his own direction, or forces Joe to be more transparent, That could spark a clash fast, because a Tate being pushed into openness usually doesn't react calmly. Now I want to throw it to you. When Graham says he's on Joe's side but may not play by the same rules, do you hear loyalty or the first spark of a future showdown? Do you think Graham will rein Joe in and reshape this plan? Or will Joe find a way to put Graham back where he wants him, as a piece on the board? If you enjoyed this kind of breakdown, hit subscribe and drop your take in the comments. I really want to see which side you're on.